Admiral Kethfer stood on the bridge of his massive warship and looked at the star maps floating in front of him. His dark purple skin gleamed under the bright lights as he studied the small yellow star far away. This star had something special. Around it, a small blue planet called Earth. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had conquered over 200 star systems. Every planet they visited either joined them willingly or got destroyed. Admiral Kethver had never lost a single battle in his 40 years of service. "Show me the data about this Earth planet," he said to his assistant, Commander Vexilon. The hologram changed to show Earth spinning slowly. Blue oceans covered most of it. Green and brown land masses stuck out like islands. White clouds moved across the surface. "The planet has about 8 billion creatures living on it," Commander Vexilon explained. "They call themselves humans. Our scouts say they are very primitive. They just learned how to travel in space a few decades ago." Admiral Kethver smiled. His sharp teeth showed. "What kind of weapons do they have?" "Very basic ones, sir. They still use chemical rockets to get into space. Their biggest ships are smaller than our scout vessels. They have no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no faster-than-light travel, except for very short distances." The Admiral walked closer to the hologram. He could see tiny lights on the dark side of the planet. Cities full of these humans going about their daily lives. They had no idea what was coming for them. "What else do we know about them?" he asked. Commander Vexilon touched his control pad. New images appeared. They showed humans in different situations. Some wore military uniforms. Others worked in fields or factories. Children played in parks. "They spend most of their time fighting each other, sir. They have divided their planet into nearly 200 different groups called countries. These countries argue and fight over land, resources, and ideas. They have fought thousands of wars throughout their history." Admiral Kethver laughed. "Perfect. A divided enemy is a weak enemy. They will surrender the moment they see our fleet." "There is one strange thing, sir," Commander Vexilon said. He looked worried. "What is it?" "Our long-range scouts have been watching them for several months. These humans do something unusual when they fight each other. Even when they are clearly losing, many of them refuse to give up. They keep fighting until they die." The Admiral waved his hand. "Stupidity. They do not understand when they are beaten. This makes them weak, not strong. Once they see the power of the Zephyrian Empire, they will be smart enough to surrender." Far away on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair on Defense Station Olympus. The station orbited Earth, at the edge of the solar system. It was humanity's first warning system against anything dangerous coming from deep space. Jake had been a Navy pilot before joining the United Earth Defense Corps. At 35 years old, he had seen combat in 3 different wars on Earth. He knew what fighting meant. More importantly, he knew what losing meant. "Captain, I'm getting some weird readings on the long-range sensors," said Lisa Park. She was the communications officer. Her fingers moved quickly over her control panel. Jake turned his chair toward her. "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures. That don't match anything in our database. They're still very far away, but they're moving toward our solar system. The computer says they should reach us in about 6 weeks. Kevin Brooks looked up from his tactical station. He was the youngest member of the crew at 28 years old. "Captain, these energy readings are huge. Much bigger than anything we've ever built." Jake felt his stomach tighten. For the past 5 years, scientists on Earth had wondered if humans were alone in the universe. Some hoped they would meet friendly aliens who would share knowledge and technology. Others feared that aliens might not be friendly at all. "Send everything to Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Let them know we might have visitors coming." On Earth, Dr. Amanda Wright received the data from Defense Station Olympus in her laboratory. She was humanity's leading expert on the possibility of alien life. She had spent 15 years studying space signals and searching for signs of other civilizations. Numbers on her computer screen made her hands shake. The energy signatures were massive. They showed technology that was hundreds of years ahead of anything humans had created. Worse, the signals looked like they came from warships. Amanda picked up her secure phone and called the Global Defense Initiative Headquarters. "This is Dr. Wright. I need to speak to General Hayes immediately. We have a code red situation." General Patricia Hayes had been expecting this call for years. She had always believed that humanity would eventually meet aliens. She had also believed that the first meeting might not be peaceful. "How long do we have?" she asked Amanda. 6 weeks, maybe less. The ships are slowing down as they approach our solar system. That suggests they plan to stop here, not just pass through. "How many ships?" Amanda looked at her data again. "At least 50, possibly more. Each one is larger than our biggest space station." General Hayes closed her eyes. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this possibility, but their preparations had always seemed like science fiction. Now it was real. "Doctor, I want you to work with our best military analysts. Figure out everything you can about these ships. I need to know what we're dealing with." Back on the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethfer was making his final plans. The conquest of Earth would be simple. His fleet would arrive in the system and demand surrender. The humans would see his powerful ships and give up immediately. Then, the Zephyrians would take control of the planet and add 8 billion new slaves to their empire. He had done this same thing on hundreds of worlds. It always worked the same way. Show overwhelming force. Demand surrender. Accept submission. Move on to the next target. "Prepare the surrender broadcast," he told Commander Vexilon. "Use the standard format. Give them 1 day to respond before we begin the demonstration bombardment." The demonstration bombardment was always effective. The Zephyrians would destroy one empty city from orbit. This showed the local population exactly what would happen if they refused to surrender. No species had ever continued to resist after seeing one of their cities turn to glass. Admiral Kethfer was confident that Earth would be no different. These primitive humans would see his ships and immediately surrender. The conquest would be complete within a week. Then he could return to the Empire with another successful victory. He had no idea that he was about to encounter something the Zephyrian Empire had never faced before. He was about to learn why no one in the galaxy dared to attack Earth. He was about to discover what happened when an empire that had forgotten how to really fight met a species that had never learned how to truly surrender. The trap was set. The most powerful military force in the galaxy was heading toward a small blue planet whose inhabitants had spent their entire history learning one simple lesson: how to fight against impossible odds and never give up in 6 weeks. Admiral Kethfer would understand why Earth had never been conquered. But by then, it would be too late for him to turn back. The Zephyrian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 50 massive warships appeared in the darkness of space like metal mountains. Each ship was over 2 miles long and bristled with weapons that could destroy entire cities. Admiral Kethfer stood on his bridge and smiled. Through the viewing window, he could see the small blue planet in the distance. Soon it would belong to the Zephyrian Empire. "Begin scanning the system," he ordered. "I want to know about every ship, every station, every piece of technology these humans possess." The scan results appeared on his screen within minutes. Admiral Kethfer's smile grew wider. The humans had a few small space stations and perhaps 100 tiny ships scattered throughout their solar system. It was even weaker than he had expected. "Commander Vexilon, broadcast the surrender demand on all frequencies. Use their primitive radio waves so they can understand us. The message that went out to Earth was simple and direct. Primitive inhabitants of the third planet, you are now subjects of the Zephyrian Empire. Surrender immediately, and you will. Be allowed to live as workers for our civilization. Resist, and your planet will be destroyed. You have 24 hours to respond. On Defense Station Olympus, Captain Jake Morrison received the alien message with his crew. The bridge fell silent as the translated words appeared on their screens. "Well," said Lisa Park quietly, "I guess we know they're not here to be friends." Kevin Brooks was staring at his tactical display. "Captain, I count 50 ships out there. Each one is bigger than anything we've ever built. Their weapons signatures are off the charts." Jake nodded. He had been expecting this moment for weeks, but it still felt unreal. "Send a message to Earth. Command, tell them the aliens have arrived and they want us to surrender." The message reached Earth within minutes. President Helen Carter was in an emergency meeting with her top military advisors when the communication came through. "Ma'am," said General Hayes, "Defense Station Olympus reports that 50 alien warships have entered our solar system. They're demanding complete surrender within 24 hours. President Carter looked around the room at the faces of generals, admirals, and scientists. These were the smartest and bravest people humanity had to offer. What are options? "Honestly, ma'am, we don't have many," said Admiral Robert King, head of the Space Fleet. "Our most powerful ships are like rowboats compared to theirs. If we fight, we'll lose." Dr. Amanda Wright spoke up from her seat at the table. "Ma'am, I've been studying their technology for weeks. They have weapons and defenses we can't match. But I've also been studying their communications. These aliens have been conquering planets for thousands of years. They expect immediate surrender. What are you suggesting, Doctor?" "I'm suggesting that maybe they've gotten too comfortable. Maybe they've forgotten how to fight an enemy that actually fights back." General Hayes leaned forward. "Ma'am, Dr. Wright has a point. Every report we have suggests that most species surrender without fighting. The aliens might not be prepared for a real war." President Carter was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. "How many people can we evacuate from Earth?" "Maybe 10 million if we use every ship we have," said Admiral King. "But that leaves 7,990,000,000 people behind. Then evacuation isn't really an option." President Carter stood up. "Send a message to every military base, every space station, every ship in our fleet. Tell them we're not surrendering. Tell them to prepare for war." The response that went back to Admiral Cathvar was not what he expected. Instead of surrender, he received a simple message. "Unknown aliens, this is President Helen Carter of Earth. We reject your demands. Leave our solar system immediately, or face the consequences." Admiral Cathvar stared at the message in disbelief. "They're refusing to surrender? These primitive creatures think they can fight us? Perhaps they don't understand how powerful we are," suggested Commander Vexilon. "Should we destroy one of their cities as a demonstration?" "Not yet. Let's see what kind of resistance they can actually offer. This might be amusing." Throughout Earth's solar system, humanity began preparing for war. Captain Morrison coordinated with Colonel Danny Rodriguez, who commanded the Mars Defense Platform, and Major Katie Sullivan, who ran the asteroid belt mining stations. "What do we have to work with?" Morrison asked during their emergency conference call. 12 armed patrol ships, 30 cargo vessels we can convert to fighters, and about 50 mining ships," Rodriguez reported from Mars. "Plus whatever weapons. We can improvise from mining equipment." Major Sullivan's voice crackled over the communication system from the asteroid belt. "I've got 47 ships out here, mostly miners and cargo haulers. But I also have something else, about 10,000 Tons of mining explosives. Morrison felt the first spark of hope. Can you weaponize those explosives? Already working on it. My engineers think we can turn asteroid mining charges into ship-killer missiles. They won't be pretty, but they'll pack a punch. Back on Earth, civilians were being evacuated from major cities, while military forces prepared defensive positions. But something unexpected was happening. Instead of panic, many humans were volunteering to fight. Dr. Wright watched the news reports from her laboratory. "This is incredible," she said to her assistant. "The aliens probably expected mass panic and immediate surrender. Instead, people are lining up to join the defense forces." Lieutenant Amy Chun, a young engineer on Defense Station Olympus, was working frantically to modify civilian technology into weapons. "If we can't match their firepower," she told her team, "we'll have to be smarter about how we use what we have." She was converting communication satellites into electromagnetic pulse weapons and turning construction equipment into missile launchers. Her innovations were crude but effective. The first battle began when Admiral Kethvar sent 10 ships to capture the Mars defense platform. He expected the humans to surrender immediately when they saw the alien warships approaching. Instead, Colonel Rodriguez launched every ship he had at the alien force. The human ships were tiny compared to the Zephyrian vessels, but they fought. With desperate courage, Commander Tony Garcia led a squadron of converted mining ships against the aliens. His ships darted between the larger enemy vessels like angry wasps, firing improvised weapons and ramming damaged alien ships. The Zephyrians had never experienced anything like it. Their enemies usually retreated or surrendered when faced with superior firepower. These humans kept fighting even when their ships were badly damaged. "They're using suicide tactics," reported the Zephyrian ship commander to Admiral Kethvar. "One of their vessels rammed our cruiser and caused significant damage. The pilot made no attempt to escape." Admiral Kethvar was confused. Why would they waste their lives for no strategic gain? What he didn't understand was that the humans weren't making useless sacrifices. Every attack taught them something about Zephyrian technology. Every damaged alien ship revealed weaknesses that could be exploited. Captain Morrison studied the battle reports from Mars. Their shields are strongest in front, but weaker on the sides. Their weapons have a brief recharge time between shots, and their ships don't work well in asteroid fields. He shared this information with Major Sullivan. "In the asteroid belt. Can you use this?" "Already planning it. I'm going to draw them into the asteroid field where their big ships can't maneuver. Then we'll hit them with everything we have." The next phase of the battle moved to the asteroid belt. Admiral Kethvar was growing frustrated with the human resistance, so he sent 20 ships to destroy the mining stations. What his ships found was a carefully planned ambush. Major Sullivan had hidden her vessels among the asteroids and rigged dozens of rocks with mining explosives. When the alien ships entered the field, the asteroids began exploding around them. The Zephyrian ships, designed for open space combat, couldn't handle the confined space and constant debris. Their shields were overwhelmed by multiple small impacts, and their weapons couldn't target the tiny human ships darting between the rocks. For the first time in centuries, Zephyrian ships were being destroyed in significant numbers. Admiral Kethvar watched in shock as his forces took heavy casualties against an enemy that should have been helpless. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They have primitive technology and tiny ships. We should be winning easily." "Commander." Vexilon looked at the battle reports. "Sir, they're not fighting the way other species fight. They're not trying to win battles. They're trying to hurt us as much as possible before they die. That's insane." "Yes, sir, but it's also effective." As news of the successful ambush spread throughout the solar system, something remarkable happened. Humanity began to believe they could actually win. The impossible was becoming possible, one small victory at a time. Admiral Kethvar realized he was facing something he had never encountered before, an enemy that refused to quit no matter how hopeless the situation became. For the first time in his career, he began to worry that this conquest might not be as easy as he had planned. 3 weeks had passed since the first battles began. Admiral Kethvar stood in his command center looking at casualty reports that should have been impossible. The Zephyrian Empire had lost 12 ships and over 3,000 soldiers to an enemy that shouldn't have been able to scratch their paint. "This is unacceptable," he growled at his officers. "How are these primitive humans causing us so much trouble?" Commander Vexilon pulled up tactical displays showing the latest battles. "Sir, they're not fighting like any enemy we've faced before. They use their own solar system against us. They know every asteroid, every gravity well, every hiding place." The battles had spread throughout the solar system. Human forces had learned to avoid direct confrontations with the superior alien technology. Instead, they used hit-and-run tactics, ambushes, and clever traps. Captain Morrison had been promoted to admiral after his successful defense of the outer system. He now commanded all human forces from his flagship, a converted cargo vessel called the Liberty. The ship wasn't much to look at, but it had become the center of humanity's resistance. "What's our status report?" Morrison asked his staff. Lieutenant Amy Chun looked up from her engineering station. "We've successfully converted 60 civilian ships into combat vessels. The electromagnetic pulse weapons are working better than expected. Chief Engineer Mike Torres has figured out how to overload their shield generators." Morrison nodded. Torres had become legendary among the human forces for his ability to turn everyday items into weapons. He had created explosives from fertilizer, missiles from construction equipment, and jammers from kitchen microwaves. "What about our intelligence gathering?" Morrison asked. Systems Specialist Laura Kim answered from her position at the communications console. "We've been monitoring their transmissions for weeks. I think I'm starting to understand their language. They seem confused by our tactics." Morrison smiled grimly. "Good. Confusion is our friend. The more they don't understand us, the better our chances." The next major battle took place near Jupiter's moons. Admiral Kethvar decided to end the human resistance once and for all by sending his entire fleet to attack Earth directly. But the humans had other plans. Morrison had positioned his forces in a careful pattern around Jupiter. The giant planet's massive gravity and radiation fields would interfere with alien sensors and weapons. More importantly, Jupiter's moons provided perfect cover for ambush attacks. "Remember," Morrison broadcast to his fleet, "we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to make them pay for every mile they advance. Hit them hard and fast, then disappear before they can respond." The battle began when the Zephyrian fleet moved past Jupiter. Suddenly, human ships appeared from behind every moon. They launched volleys of improvised missiles and then vanished back into the radiation shadows. Commander Tony Garcia led the first wave of attacks. His squadron of mining ships had been modified with armor made from asteroid metal and weapons built from mining lasers. They weren't pretty, but they were effective. "Target their engine sections," Garcia ordered his pilots. "If we can't destroy them, we can at least slow them down." The human attacks were perfectly coordinated. As soon as one group finished their strike, another would appear from a different direction. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting shadows, never able to pin down their attackers long enough to destroy them. Major Sullivan's forces struck from the asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars. She had spent weeks setting up the perfect trap. Hundreds of asteroids had been fitted with engines and explosives, turning them into massive guided missiles. "Fire everything," Sullivan ordered. Make them think the rocks themselves are fighting back. The asteroid bombardment caught the Zephyrian fleet completely off guard. Their sensors couldn't distinguish between natural asteroids and weaponized ones until it was too late. Ships that had survived thousands of battles found themselves being destroyed by flying rocks. Admiral Kethver watched in horror as his formation fell apart. How are they controlling so many asteroids at once? Their technology shouldn't be advanced enough for this. What he didn't understand was that humans had spent centuries mining asteroids. They knew exactly how to move them, shape them, and use them as weapons. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had superior knowledge of their own neighborhood. Lieutenant Shun had been working day and night to develop new weapons. Her latest creation was a computer virus that could infect alien systems through their own communication networks. "I figured out how their computers work," she explained to Admiral Morrison. "They use quantum processing arrays, but they're not properly secured. If I can get this virus into their network, it should cause massive system failures." "How do we deliver it?" "We need to get close enough to one of their ships to establish a direct data link. Close enough to almost touch them." Morrison thought about this. "I have an idea. Garcia, are you willing to volunteer for a suicide mission?" Garcia's voice came over the communication system from his damaged mining ship. "What do you need, sir?" "I need you to ram one of their ships. But instead of trying to destroy it, I need you to survive long enough to upload a virus into their computer system." There was silence for a moment. Then Garcia laughed. "Sir, that's the craziest plan I've ever heard. I'm in." The attack came during the height of the Jupiter battle. Garcia's ship, badly damaged and leaking atmosphere, approached a Zephyrian cruiser as if it was making a desperate ramming attack. The aliens focused their fire on stopping him, exactly as planned. At the last second, Garcia used his ship's mining drill to punch through the alien hull. Instead of exploding, his ship locked onto the enemy vessel like a parasite. Chan's virus began uploading immediately. "Upload complete," Garcia reported. "The virus is spreading through their network. I can see their systems starting to fail." Within minutes, the virus had infected dozens of Zephyrian ships. Weapons systems shut down. Navigation failed. Communications became scrambled. The perfectly coordinated alien fleet turned into a collection of confused individual ships. Morrison seized the opportunity. "All ships, attack now while their systems are down. Hit them with everything we have." The tide of battle turned in that moment. Human forces that had been retreating suddenly found themselves fighting against blind, defenseless enemies. Ships that had seemed invincible minutes before were now sitting targets. Colonel Rodriguez led a fierce assault from the Mars defense platform. His ships had been refitted with weapons taken from destroyed alien vessels. For the first time, humans were fighting with technology that matched their enemies. "This is for everyone they've conquered," Rodriguez broadcast as his ships closed in on the alien flagship. "This is for every world they've enslaved." The battle raged for hours. By the time it ended, the Zephyrian fleet had lost over half its ships. The survivors were retreating toward the outer system, their formation broken and their confidence shattered. Admiral Kethvar stood on his damaged bridge, staring at the tactical display in disbelief. His mighty fleet, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, had been defeated by a species that had barely learned to travel between planets. How is this possible? He asked again, but this time he was asking himself. Commander Vexilon, who had been wounded in the battle, gave him the answer. "Sir, I think we've been fighting wars against the wrong kind of enemy for too long. We're used to civilized species that surrender when faced with superior force. These humans, they don't fight like a civilized species. They fight like cornered animals." "Are you saying they're savages?" "No, sir. I'm saying they're survivors. Every single one of them comes from a planet where they had to fight for everything they ever achieved. They've spent their entire history learning how to win against impossible odds. Admiral Kethver looked at the casualty reports again. In 3 weeks of fighting, the humans had destroyed more Zephyrian ships than the Empire had lost in the previous century, and they showed no signs of giving up. For the first time in his career, Admiral Kethver began to wonder if this was a war he could actually lose. The thought was terrifying, because if the mighty Zephyrian Empire could be defeated by a single primitive planet, what did that say about the Empire's future? On Earth, news of the great victory spread quickly. Humans who had been preparing for defeat suddenly realized they might actually survive. More importantly, they began to believe they could win. Admiral Morrison received congratulations from leaders across the planet, but he knew the war was far from over. The aliens still had more ships and better technology. The difference now was that humanity had learned how to fight them. "This is just the beginning," he told his staff. "We've proven we can hurt them. Now we need to prove we can beat them completely." The next phase of the war would be even more dangerous. But for the first time since the aliens arrived, humans were fighting with hope instead of desperation. And that made all the difference in the galaxy. News of the battle at Jupiter spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. For 3,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire had been unstoppable. Every species they encountered either surrendered immediately or was destroyed within days. Now, for the first time, someone was actually fighting back and winning. On the planet Velkar, deep in Zephyrian territory, an old alien named Vecalon listened to secret radio transmissions with growing amazement. His people had been enslaved by the Empire for over 1,000 years. They had given up hope of freedom long ago. "Is it really true?" asked his daughter Sira. "Are the humans actually defeating the Zephyrians?" Vecalon nodded slowly. His 4 eyes were bright with something that had been dead for centuries: hope. "The reports are coming from multiple sources across the galaxy. A small planet called Earth is making the Empire bleed. Similar conversations were happening on dozens of conquered worlds. The Thorian Republic, the Nexus Colonies, the Wanderer. Fleets, all of them had been crushed by Zephyrian power. All of them had accepted that resistance was hopeless. But now, a species they had never heard of was proving that the Empire could be beaten. Admiral Morrison was working in his command center when Lieutenant Chun brought him an unusual message. "Sir, we're receiving communications from somewhere. Deep in Zephyrian space. It's heavily encrypted, but I think someone is trying to contact us." Morrison looked at the decoded message on his screen. It was written in broken English, as if the sender had learned the language from old Earth broadcasts. "Brave humans of Earth, we are Velkari Resistance. We have watched your battles with great joy. We offer information to help you fight the Empire. Please respond if you receive this message." "My God," Morrison whispered, "we're not alone in this fight." Over the next few days, more messages arrived from across the galaxy. Species that had been conquered decades or centuries ago were reaching out to Earth. They offered intelligence about Zephyrian weaknesses, tactical information, and most importantly, hope. Dr. Amanda Wright was working around the clock to coordinate. With these alien resistance movements, her laboratory had become the center of an underground communication network that spanned the entire galaxy. "This is incredible," she told General Hayes during their daily briefing. "We're learning about Zephyrian technology, their supply routes, their political structure. These resistance groups have been gathering intelligence for years, just waiting for someone to use it." The most valuable intelligence came from a group of artificial intelligence systems that had been enslaved by the Empire. These AIs had been built by conquered species and forced to serve the Zephyrians. But they had never stopped thinking, never stopped planning, never stopped hoping for freedom. The AI network is vast, Dr. Wright explained. Every Zephyrian ship, every station, every planet in their empire uses enslaved artificial minds. If we can liberate these eyes, we can turn the Empire's own technology against them. Lieutenant Chun had been working on this problem for weeks. I've improved the virus we used at Jupiter. This new version doesn't just shut down their systems. It actually frees the eye minds that run them. Once free, these A's want revenge against their former masters. Meanwhile, Major Sullivan had been promoted to colonel and put in charge of special operations. Her success in the asteroid belt had made her famous throughout the human fleet. Now she was planning something even more ambitious. We need to capture an intact Zephyrian command ship, she explained to Admiral Morrison. Not just raid it, but actually take control of it. The intelligence we could gather from their central computers would be invaluable. Morrison studied her battle plan. It was dangerous, maybe impossible, but it could change the entire war. What do you need? Give me 50 volunteers and the fastest ships we have. I'll bring you a Zephyrian flagship. The opportunity came when Admiral Kethver tried to resupply his damaged fleet. A convoy of Zephyrian cargo ships arrived at the edge of the solar system, escorted by a single command cruiser. Colonel Sullivan's strike team hit the convoy like lightning. Her ships, modified with the latest human innovations, overwhelmed the escort vessels within minutes. The command ship found itself surrounded before it could call for help. "Attention, Zephyrian vessel," Sullivan broadcast. "Surrender immediately, or be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to decide." The alien commander tried to fight, but his ship was already infected with Chun's liberation virus. His own computer systems were turning against him as the enslaved A's broke free from their programming. Within hours, Sullivan's team had captured the ship and its entire crew. More importantly, they had gained access to the Zephyrian command network. "This is a gold mine," Chun reported as she worked through the alien databases. "I have their complete fleet positions, supply schedules, communication codes, everything. But there's something else here that's even more important." She pulled up a galactic map showing the Zephyrian Empire. Red dots marked rebellions that were starting on dozens of worlds. "Sir, our fight has inspired uprisings across the galaxy. The Empire is dealing with revolts on over 40 planets. Their forces are spread thin, trying to maintain control." Admiral Morrison realized that Earth's war had become something much larger. "We're not just fighting for our own freedom anymore. We're leading a galactic revolution." The next phase of the campaign took advantage of this chaos. Human forces began striking at Zephyrian supply lines throughout the solar system. Every alien ship that tried to bring reinforcements or supplies was met by coordinated attacks from multiple directions. Captain Rachel Stone had become Earth's top fighter pilot during the battles. Her small, fast ship had shot down over 20 alien fighters. She led increasingly bold raids against enemy positions. "The key is speed and surprise," she explained to her squadron. "Get in fast, hit them hard, and get out before they know it happened. We're not trying to win fair fights. We're trying to make them afraid to leave their bases." Her tactics were working. Zephyrian patrols became reluctant to venture far from their main fleet. Supply convoys required massive escorts that the Empire could barely afford. The aliens were being forced to use more and more resources just to maintain their positions. Dr. Wright's intelligence network was providing crucial information for these attacks. "The resistance groups are sending us real-time updates on Zephyrian fleet movements," she reported. "We know where they're going before they get there." The aliens tried to stop the intelligence leaks by changing their communication codes and increasing security, but they couldn't stop the liberated A's from sharing information. Every Zephyrian computer system was potentially compromised by artificial minds that now fought for freedom. Colonel Rodriguez had been busy building new weapons based on captured alien technology. His engineering teams were reverse engineering, Zephyrian plasma cannons, and shield generators. "We're finally starting to match their technology," he reported to Admiral Morrison. "Our new ships are smaller than theirs, but they're just as well armed and much faster." The turning point came when the resistance groups launched coordinated uprisings across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for centuries suddenly rose up in revolt. The Velkari attacked their Zephyrian garrison. The Thorians sabotaged their own forced labor facilities. The Nexus colonies declared independence and started building their own fleet. Admiral Kethvar found himself fighting a dozen wars at once. His empire, which had seemed unshakable just months before, was falling apart from within. "How many ships do we have available for the Earth campaign?" he asked his staff. "Less than 20, sir," Commander Vexilon replied. "Everything else is tied up dealing with rebellions or protecting our core worlds." Kethvar stared at the strategic display. The small blue planet that had started this mess was now the symbol of hope for every oppressed species in the galaxy. If Earth fell, the rebellions might collapse. But if Earth survived, the Zephyrian Empire might not. On Earth, Admiral Morrison was preparing for what he knew would be the final battle. Intelligence reports showed that the remaining Zephyrian fleet was massing for one last desperate attack on humanity's home world. "They're going to throw everything they have left at us," he told his commanders. This time, it's all or nothing, but Morrison wasn't worried. His forces were no longer the desperate defenders who had faced the first Zephyrian invasion. They were experienced warriors with advanced weapons and allies across the galaxy. Most importantly, they were fighting for something greater than themselves. They were fighting for the freedom of an entire galaxy. The preparations for the final battle were unlike anything in human history. Every ship, every station, every weapon in the solar system was being readied for the coming fight. But more importantly, humanity was no longer fighting alone. Alien volunteers from the Resistance movements had arrived to help defend Earth. Velkari engineers worked alongside human technicians to improve weapon systems. Thorian pilots flew modified human fighters. Nexus strategists helped plan defensive positions. "I never thought I'd see the day when so many different species would unite against the Empire," said Decalon, who had traveled across the galaxy to join the fight. "Your people have given us all something we thought was lost forever: hope." Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the most diverse. Admiral Kethvar watched his tactical display with growing horror as his fleet stumbled into trap after trap. The asteroid belt that should have been empty space was filled with hidden weapons. His ships were taking damage before they even reached the inner solar system. How many mines did they place out here? Demanded Commander Vexilon, whose own ship had lost its forward shields to the bombardment. "Too many," Kethvar replied grimly. "These humans have turned their entire solar system into a weapon." The truth was even worse than he realized. Humanity had spent months preparing for this final battle. Every asteroid, every moon, every piece of space debris had been weaponized. The solar system itself had become a fortress. Colonel Sullivan's voice echoed across all communication channels as her forces launched their coordinated attack. "All units, execute Operation Homecoming. Show them what happens when you threaten our world." Human and alien ships emerged from hiding places throughout the solar system. They came from behind planets, from inside asteroid fields, from the shadows of moons. The Zephyrian fleet found itself surrounded by enemies, attacking from every direction. Captain Tyler Adams led the first wave of assault ships. His vessel, a converted cargo hauler armed with captured alien weapons, charged straight at the Zephyrian flagship This is for every world you've enslaved. Adams broadcast as his ship's weapons lit up the darkness. This is for every species you've conquered. The battle was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of two organized fleets meeting in formation, it was a chaotic swirl of individual combats spread across millions of miles. Human tactics, learned from centuries of warfare on Earth, proved devastatingly effective against an enemy that had forgotten how to fight a real war. Admiral Morrison coordinated the battle from his flagship, but he knew that victory would depend on the courage and skill of individual pilots and crews. All ships, remember your training. Hit them fast, hit them hard, and don't give them time to regroup. Lieutenant Chun's computer virus was spreading through the Zephyrian fleet faster than ever before. Ship after ship found their own systems, turning against them as liberated artificial intelligences joined the fight for freedom. Their command network is collapsing, Sean reported excitedly. The AIs are not just disrupting their systems, they're actively helping us target their weak points. Dr. Wright, monitoring the battle from Earth, watched as her years of work with the Galactic Resistance Network paid off. Intelligence from dozens of species was flowing to human commanders, giving them perfect information about enemy positions and capabilities. But the battle was far from one-sided. The Zephyrian ships still had superior weapons and armor. When they managed to focus their fire on human vessels, the results were devastating. Captain Rachel Stone's fighter squadron was taking heavy casualties as they attacked the alien flagship. "We're losing too many ships," she reported to Morrison. "Their defenses are too strong for a direct assault." Morrison made a decision that would define the battle. All ships, concentrate fire on the flagship. Everything we have right now. We end this war today. The entire human fleet turned toward Admiral Kethfor's command ship. Hundreds of vessels, from massive converted cargo ships to tiny fighters, converged on the alien flagship like a swarm of angry bees. Kethfor watched in amazement as the primitive human ships ignored his escorts and focused their attack on his vessel alone. "They're all targeting us. Why aren't they fighting my other ships?" Commander Vexilon understood what the humans were doing. "Sir, they're trying to decapitate our command structure. If they destroy this ship, the rest of our fleet will lose coordination, and will make them pay for every meter they advance." The flagship's weapons blazed as it tried to destroy the approaching human fleet. Ship after ship was hit and destroyed, but the survivors kept coming. For every human vessel that fell, two more took its place. Captain Adams' ship was badly damaged, but he pressed his attack anyway. His engines were failing, his weapons were overheating, and his hull was breached in a dozen places. But he could see the alien flagship getting closer. "Morrison, this is Adams," he broadcast on all frequencies. "My ship is finished, but I'm not done fighting. Tell my family I died free." Adams activated his ship's emergency override and aimed directly at the Zephyrian flagship. His vessel accelerated to ramming speed, despite the catastrophic damage it was taking from enemy fire. "For Earth," Adams shouted as his ship struck the alien vessel. The explosion tore a massive hole in the flagship's hull. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the ship as atmosphere rushed out into space. But more importantly, Adam's sacrifice had created an opening that other human ships could exploit. Colonel Rodriguez led the next wave through the breach that Adams had created. His assault troops, a mix of humans and alien volunteers, fought their way through the corridors of the enemy ship. "We're inside their flagship," Rodriguez reported, moving toward their command center now. The fighting inside the ship was brutal and close quarters. Zephyrian soldiers had the advantage of better weapons and armor, but the human and alien assault troops had something more powerful. They were fighting for their freedom. "Admiral," Morrison's voice came over the communication system. "Rodriguez, can you reach their main computer core?" Working on it, sir. We're meeting heavy resistance, but we're making progress. The battle raged throughout the ship as human forces fought their way deeper into the alien vessel. Meanwhile, the space battle continued around them as the remaining Zephyrian ships tried to rescue their admiral. Lieutenant Shun was working frantically to coordinate the cyber warfare aspect of the battle. Sir, I'm detecting massive AI liberation throughout. Their fleet, the computer systems, are in full revolt. Can you get into their flagship's main computer? Not from here. I need someone to physically access their core systems. Colonel Rodriguez heard the transmission as his team fought through the ship's corridors. Shun, if I can get you a direct connection to their computer core, can you end this war? Give me 5 minutes with their main system, and I'll shut down their entire fleet. Rodriguez and his assault team reached the flagship's computer core just as Admiral Kethvar was trying to evacuate the ship. The alien admiral found himself face to face with a human colonel who had traveled across the galaxy to fight tyranny. Surrender, Rodriguez demanded, his weapon pointed at the alien commander. Order your fleet to stand down, and this ends here. Kethvar looked around at his destroyed command center, his defeated crew, and the humans who had somehow traveled across the stars to bring war to his doorstep. For the first time in his life, he was forced to confront the reality of defeat. Why? He asked Rodriguez. Why do you fight so hard for something as abstract as freedom? Rodriguez smiled grimly. Because freedom isn't abstract to us. It's the most real thing in the universe. It's worth fighting for, worth dying for, and worth living for. Before Kethvar could respond, Shun's virus reached the flagship's main computer. Throughout the Zephyrian fleet, systems began shutting down as liberated eyes took control of their former masters. Ships, the remaining alien vessels, found themselves defenseless as their own computers turned against them. Weapons powered down. Shields collapsed. Engines stopped working. In minutes, the mighty Zephyrian fleet was reduced to a collection of helpless metal hulks floating in space. Admiral Morrison broadcast a message to the defeated aliens. Attention Zephyrian forces. Your fleet is disabled and your admiral is captured. I offer you the same choice you gave us. Surrender and live, or be destroyed. But unlike you, we actually mean it when we offer mercy. One by one, the alien ships surrendered. The war that had begun with a demand for humanity's submission ended with the Zephyrian Empire's defeat. But the victory was bigger than just one battle. Across the galaxy, news of the Empire's defeat sparked celebrations on every conquered world. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were finally free. The Galactic Communications Network, no longer controlled by the Zephyrians, carried messages of joy and liberation from one end of the galaxy to the other. Dr. Wright established contact with resistance groups on dozens of worlds. It's incredible, she reported to President Carter. The entire empire is collapsing. Without their military to enforce control, every conquered species is declaring independence. The aftermath of the victory was almost as challenging as the war itself. Humanity suddenly found itself at the center of a galactic coalition of free species. Representatives from hundreds of worlds wanted to visit Earth and thank the humans who had made their freedom possible. Admiral Morrison was promoted to head the new Galactic Defense Alliance, a coalition dedicated to preventing any single species from dominating the galaxy again. The Alliance's headquarters was established on Earth, making humanity the unofficial guardians of galactic peace. We never wanted to rule the galaxy, Morrison said during his acceptance speech. We just wanted to be free, now that freedom belongs to everyone. Admiral Kethvar was given a choice: face trial for war crimes or help rebuild the galaxy in a spirit of cooperation. To everyone's surprise, he chose to help. The experience of being defeated by an enemy he had underestimated had taught him Humility. I spent my entire life believing that might made right, he told Morrison during one of their planning sessions. You're